From the fires of revolution came the Grande Armée, Napoleon's massively crafted weapon in which to hold Europe by its throat against the point of a bayonet. Today we'll be dissecting the revolutionary Grand Army under its commander, Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, dissecting its ranks, history, and campaigns. La Grande Armée was the main fighting force of the Imperial French forces under Napoleon from 1804 to 1815. It saw up to 2.1 million men pass through its ranks as the continent collapsed and was, baptized in fire. This was until the disastrous invasion of the Russian Empire, in which it never regained full stability or control over its subjects. The Grande Armée was formed as l'Armée des Côtes de l'Océan, or the Army of Ocean Coasts, intended for the invasion of Britain at the port of Boulogne in 1804, after which the coalition was formed once again to capitulate France, and thus the army marched eastwards into Ulm. This is known as the victorious Ulm campaign. General Karl von Mack's isolated Austria army surrendered, which resulted in 60,000 Austrian prisoners at the cost of just 2,000 French soldiers. By November, the city of Vienna was taken, though Austria refused to surrender, and this was followed by the Battle of Austerlitz, which saw the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire and the defeat of the Austrians, Prussians, and Russians. Following this campaign, he would turn his attention to the Polish, where he'd meet General Levin von August von Benningsen's Russian army, which was soundly defeated at the Battle of Friedland on the 14th of June, 1807. This victory brought the Treaty of Tilsit between France, Russia and Prussia in July, leaving Napoleon with no enemies on the continent. The Grande Armée was then dissolved in 1808, and its constituents formed into the Army of Spain, the Army of the Rhine, and then that was later reorganised into the Army of Germany. Following tensions with Russia, Napoleon invaded in 1812 with the greatest force he had ever amassed, made up from different soldiers from the different satellite states. This is unlike the Grande Armée before, that was mainly French. On September 7th, 1812, the Battle of Borodino took place, which saw the most casualties in Europe in one battle until World War I. This, last-ditch effort to defend Moscow. The Grand Army achieved a brutal but ultimately unsatisfactory triumph, and the Grand Army arrived in Moscow a week later to find it had been burnt to the ground by Russian forces, and it was completely deserted. The Sixth Alliance would therefore emerge after France's defeat in Russia, allowing Napoleon a chance to triumph at Lutzen and Bautzen. These victories, however, only resulted in an armistice because of unsatisfactory fighting conditions, and the army of the French, the infantry cavalry had suffered many losses. It was just a disaster, and there were a lot of errors in judgment by the French Marshals. I won't go into detail about this whole defeat, but he is defeated, pushed out of France into Elba, comes back, is defeated at Waterloo. Interestingly, there was little organisational support for staff duties in the military, logistics, planning, and people prior to the late 18th century, they didn't really have any specialised role for this, and this is what we see in the Grand Army. When General Louis-Alexandre Berthier, later Marshal, was appointed Chief of Staff to the Army of Italy in 1795 during the French Revolutionary Wars, it was the first time General Staff was used in the modern era. Berthier was successful in creating a cohesive staff support group. The following year, when Napoleon took over the army, he rapidly learned to admire Berthier's methods and adopted it for his own headquarters. He only used it for his own command group though. The Maison Militaire de l'Empereur, or the military household of the Emperor, was Napoleon's personal military staff and included the Department of Aides-de-camp, or ADCs, orderly officers, the Emperor's cabinet with the Secretariat, the department that collected intelligence about enemy using spies, and the topographical department. Now, the army was also the first to use the corps, or corps d'armée, which were given special tasks during warfare to complete and may have been commanded by a Général de Division, or a Lieutenant General, or a Field Marshal. Napoleon had a lot of faith in his corps commanders and often gave them a lot of leeway as long as they followed general guidelines of his strategic goals and cooperated to achieve them. If they didn't satisfy him, he wouldn't think twice about reprimanding or dismissing them. In many cases, he would just remove their command and take leadership himself. The system of aristocracy, by paying your way into the military, was also abolished, which allowed experienced and useful soldiers or officers to be given appropriate command for their skill level. And this is one of the reasons why they practically slapped the shit out of Europe. The Marshal d'Empire, or the Marshal of France, sorry I butchered that, would be the highest title that an individual could receive within the First French Empire. Held by Napoleon himself, few others were distinguished with such an impeccable rank. It was made to mimic that of Marshal of France of the Ancien regime. A total of 26 held this rank, from Louis-Alexandre Berthier, as previously mentioned, to Jean de Dieu Soult. The Marshalate swiftly rose to prominence as the highest military honour, and it was common to practice to grant a marshal the most important assignments. Each marshal had his own coat of arms and was entitled to special decorations, and some of them maintained a prominent position within the army. They carried a baton as a sign of their power and were allowed to do so. They also wore distinguished clothing. Most of the marshals held significant commands during the Napoleonic Wars, winning some of the most brilliant victories to the entire Napoleonic era. Three of them, Jean Lannes, Louis-Nicolas Deveau, and Louis-Gabriel Suchet, were virtually never defeated in pitched battle despite fighting in dozens of engagements. The insignia consisted of a double golden epaulet with 4 silver stars and 2 crossed field marshal batons. The Général de Division would normally be in charge of a division of soldiers within the army. However, he might also have the role of a well, this wasn't a rank, it was a specific role designation of Général d'Armée or Général de Corps d'Armée, if the Emperor gave him special consideration, that is. Since failure would most likely result in a demotion or outright dismissal, these would be held by generals who were normally very successful and some of the strongest commanders in the Empire. Later the name would be changed to Lieutenant General. Double golden epaulets with 3 stars would be its symbol, usually equating to other armies' Lieutenant General. The General de Brigade, Army Brigadier pretty much, or Brigadier General, would assume the direction of a brigade. As mentioned, failure would cause dismissal. This rank would be held by supreme commanders and tacticians. It would later be dubbed a Marshal de Camp. A twin golden epaulet with 2 stars would be its symbol, similar to a major general typically. The colonel would be in charge of a regiment of soldiers. He would also be granted special command over certain units for specialist operations like intelligence gathering or reconnaissance. Its rank insignia would be a pair of twin golden epaulets. The colonel in second, or the lieutenant colonel, would be a commander over a battalion or regiment of soldiers. It may also hold an office, such as a barracks commander, camp commander, those kind of things. And its insignia would be a pair of golden double epaulets with a singular red stripe. The major, or major, would hold command over a battalion of troops. Its insignia would be a pair of silver and gold epaulets. The major in second, or second major, or Major Adjutant would often hold command over a battalion of soldiers, but would be underneath a major, so it would be like a second in command in a battalion, albeit they might also have administrative duties, and a pair of twin silver golden epaulets with crimson stripe would serve as its symbol. The chef de bataillon, or the chef d'escadron, or chief of battalion or chief of squadron, held command over a battalion or a specialised squadron of troops within the Grand Army, similar in real life to a major or lieutenant colonel, though this was subordinate to them. It was distinguished by a pair of golden double epaulets, the right one with a tassel and the left one without. The Capitaine Adjutant Major, or the staff captain, would hold command over an administrative position similar to that of a senior officer, dealing with others, administrative duties, communication, and other background roles not required of the chief of a battalion or squadron. It was distinguished by double golden epaulets, the left one with a tassel and the right one without. The Capitaine, or surprisingly, the captain, did not have the highest rank within the company officers, needs no introduction, held command over a company. It was distinguished by double golden epaulets, the right one with a tassel and the left one without. The Lieutenant and the Sous-Lieutenant were both lieutenant ranks within the Grand Army, and the First Lieutenant, or Lieutenant, would hold command over a platoon, and the Sous-Lieutenant would be more like a deputy platoon commander, like a platoon commander trainee. As it was the first rank of officer commission. It was distinguished by a double or single golden red striped epaulet, one without tassels and one with tassels. The adjutant chef, and the adjutant sous-officier, or the senior warrant officer, chief warrant officer, senior warrant officer, etc., were responsible for unit returns, discipline, correspondence, transmission of orders, and communication between officers and soldiers, holding the duties of an officer yet not the rank like a real-life warrant officer. It was distinguished by a double golden and red striped epaulet, one without tassels, one with. The sergeant major, or the Marshal de Logis chef, The sergeant major would hold the key line of communication within the regiment and would be crucial in the battlefield to move troops, drill troops, that kind of thing, whereas the Marshal de Logis chef would more be commanding the unit's resources, equipment and transport for the cavalry, artillery, things that required a lot of unit resources pretty much, and it may be identified by double golden chevrons on the lower sleeve. The sergeant, or the Marshal de Logis, would pretty much be the same thing as it was above, but the sergeant would hold command over a unit, would still be key in the line of communication, and the Marshal de Logis would do the same thing as the other one, just slightly less senior, and it would be identified by a singular golden sleeve stripe. The Caporal Fourier, or the Brigadier Fourier, were the only literate NCOs and were often essential to tasks. They were pretty much quartermasters for small units. They organised camps in order to, well, basically they'd look after the soldiers. Their addition to their combat tasks, so they would also fight, but they'd also have this background role. It may be identified by the double crimson chevrons on the sleeve, plus a golden stripe above. The Caporal, or the Brigadier, was the lowest NCO rank and were in charge of smaller groups of soldiers with the Grande Armée. It may also have the Brigadier rank. It may be identified by the double crimson lining on the sleeves, and the next is the soldier, or the soldat, or whatever. A common soldier with no rank nor distinction in its duties. Well, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video as much as I enjoyed making it. I thought I'd do something that a lot of people requested for a bit of a change after the last video, which was a bit of a disaster. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Please feel free to like and subscribe. I can't force you to. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.